Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar on Cambridge International AS and A-Level Accounting. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm Georgia Robinson from Cambridge University Press, and our accounting author Julie Whatford will be presenting to you today. You may have noticed your microphones are muted. They will stay this way as we go through the session to avoid any background noise. Julie and I are also both hosting this webinar remotely, so if there are any issues with our internet connections, then please do bear with us. There'll be a Q&A session for 15 minutes at the end of the webinar, so please be thinking of questions you'd like to ask as we go through. We also ask that you use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to ask your questions, so they don't get lost in the chat. If you're having any technical difficulties with sound or video, please let us know in the chat and we'll do our best to resolve them. My colleagues Laura and Biljana are here to help with your queries. We also recommend you use headphones to listen to this session for the best sound quality. If you're unable to see the Q&A or chat icons, please hover your mouse at the bottom or the top of the screen and they should appear. As a quick reminder, we'll be covering a range of topics today, including ways to develop students' writing skills. There will also be themes that IGCSE accounting teachers may find useful. This session is also being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube at a later date. There will be no certificates of attendance for this webinar. However, we will be sending a thank you for attending email next week, and you can use this as evidence that you attended the session. This email will also include a link to the recorded video and a link to download the slides being presented today. And finally, there will be a post-webinar survey at the end of our session. We please ask that you take a moment before leaving to submit your answers. It won't take more than a minute of your time. So that's all from me for now. I'll hand you over to Julie to begin the webinar.
Thank you very much, Georgia. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Achieving More in the Accounting Classroom. My name is Julie Whatford, and I'm really looking forward to going through some ideas with you today. Just a little bit of information about me just to begin with. I've got quite a few qualifications in accounting and also business as well. And I've taught GCSE and A-level accounting for many years, since 2008, in various UK schools and colleges. I've also taught on GCSE and A-level revision workshops for international students as well for a number of years. And I'm the author for the digital teacher resource for Cambridge International AS and A-level accounting resource that will be published soon. Before I start, I'd like to offer special thanks to Kelly Chalk, who's a Cambridge International A-level business author, because I've adapted some of the slides during this webinar for some of the activities that she actually used in a previous webinar, but they are all adapted to the accounting subject area. So just a little bit about what we will be covering today in the webinar. I'll be going through how to support your pupils to understand key terms, because understanding key terms is a key thing for international students to get to grips with. We'll be also looking at ways of developing pupils' writing skills, which is essential to support students in achieving the higher grades within AS and A-level accounting. We'll be looking at activities to support learning and perhaps making accounting learning more active, and also much, much more. So I'm going to start off by looking at how to support pupils to understand key terms in AS and A-level accounting. I'm sure you're already familiar with the 2022 syllabus for AS and A-level accounting. I've just got a snapshot of a couple of topic areas from the financial accounting and cost and management accounting areas. My colleague Georgia has prepared a poll for you all just to help me to understand your backgrounds and what you're teaching currently.
That should be
really grateful if you could perhaps just complete this question just very quickly.
If you're unable to see the poll, please let us know in the chat. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We can see those coming through. Julie, are you able to see the poll from your side?
I'm not, unfortunately, Georgia.
Okay, no problem. We've had about 72% people have voted now. I'll just give it a couple more seconds.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. So we have about 44% have taught accounting for several years, so 2 years plus. 28% started teaching it over the last 2 years. 9% will start to teach it over the next 2 years, and 6% are thinking of introducing it. And then we also have 13% that teach something else, for example,
Okay.
IGCSE Accounting.
Yeah, I've got the results actually now on my screen, so thank you very much for that. So that's brilliant. Okay, so obviously for those of you as well that don't currently teach it and perhaps are teaching IGCSE, a lot of these principles will be useful for your teaching as well, because they can easily be transferred to the IGCSE syllabus as well. Okay, so out of all of these topic areas, a lot of the accounting students tend to favour, in my experience, like the numerical calculations, so preparing financial statements, also doing like investment appraisal calculations and all the costing and budgetary calculations. What I find international students find the most challenging is actually writing some of the extended response answers, which are obviously required to achieve a higher grade in AS and A-level accounting. So today's webinar is very much focusing on those skills and using those key terms and achieving the writing styles to help those students to achieve those higher grades. So why are the key terms important? They're actually the building blocks of accounting. So if students can actually achieve a firm foundation, what they'll find is that as they're building up their knowledge and as they go through the academic years of their AS and A-level accounting courses, they will find then that they've got a secure base to build upon. Like I said earlier, many international learners enjoy the numerical calculations and the preparation of financial statements, but they often struggle with those essay style questions, which are often worth a lot of marks. And that's obviously one of the reasons why a lot of learners choose accounting, because they're very numerically minded. But there is a lot of marks available for more qualitative skills, which we're going to look at later on. So various common misconceptions as well that apply when you're actually delivering the specification. In my experiences, some students struggle that credit sales and purchases only require one double entry transaction. They don't understand that you actually need to have both sides of the transaction recorded. So that can obviously be a common misconception that needs to be dealt with quite early on in the course. Some learners will use the wrong vocabulary, for example, debtor instead of trade receivable. And I find that often comes from like use of like websites or perhaps out-of-date textbooks where they actually use the wrong vocabulary, and learners are actually exposed to that and actually then start picking up those terms. And it's really important in the classroom that you actually use the terms and the vocabulary that are actually used in the Cambridge International syllabus. Credit notes should not be confused with credit entries on the accounts and credit transactions. Quite a few learners are confused between private limited and public limited companies. And also if they study business studies as well, you've also got the added complication of the public sector, which a lot of learners, in my experience, think the public limited companies belong to initially. So it's really important to carefully deliver those topic areas to help those learners to understand the difference. Some learners feel that all assets depreciate in value, and they don't initially understand that some assets obviously appreciate in value. Quite a lot of assets actually appreciate in value. And also there are different measures of short and long term. So it's really important to encourage learners to have a consistent timescale in mind. So when you're talking about short term and long term in accounting, to actually make that clear what those terms consist of. There are various ways of helping learners with key terms, okay? And I find that it's really helpful to encourage learners to produce a glossary of key terms at the back of their notes to help them to support their revision. And that's quite an easy thing to do from the start of the course. So as you're going through each chapter in the textbook, each topic area, encourage those learners at the end to produce that glossary, and they've then got that then to support their revision at the end. A lot of my learners enjoy playing classroom games and activities to support the understanding of key terms, which we're going to look at a little bit later on. But a popular one I find are like dominoes, where you've actually got a piece of card. They're quite easy to make. One half has got the term, the other half has got the description or the definition of the term, and you just mix them up. So one card would have perhaps key term 1 and the definition of key term 2. Then you mix up the cards, and learners then have to then put them together to actually join up, okay, and make a series of dominoes. You could play bingo as well, where you actually read out a key term definition and actually put a series of key terms, maybe about 15, actually on a card. And once the learner has heard, and they're all different on every learner's card, so you might have, say, 30 different terms that you're actually going to read out. And the first learner to complete their card can actually then win the game. So that's quite nice, and that adds in an element of competition. And there's obviously Kahoot as well, which is obviously a well-known app that you can actually use to support understanding of key terms. And it's really important though to question learners' understanding, because a lot of international learners will actually give you the right answers in lessons because they've learnt the topics by rote. However, some learners still don't really understand what they're saying because they've just learnt it, the terms by rote, and there's no true or deep understanding of the actual terminology. So by questioning and drilling down, you can actually then assess if learners do actually understand the term completely, and perhaps then help to address any misconceptions that are actually held. And obviously repetition as well. Practice makes perfect, as they say. So keep revisiting as well, challenging topics and terms as you go through the academic year. Various activities that you can use to support just knowledge acquisition. Okay, so multiple choice quizzes are really good. Okay, so I've just put an example on the slide of how you could actually address those, and they're quite good, just short quizzes that you can actually use. And you can actually use apps as well, as I suggested earlier, to make them a little bit more interactive. Then you can then show the poll, can't you, and the results actually on the screen, again to bring out that competition and that competitive element. You could get students to fill in the missing words as well within a statement as well, and to add an extra challenge as well, include some terms that they don't need, to actually get students to differentiate between the terms that are relevant and the terms that aren't. And there's various different ways of actually approaching this. So we talked about revision glossaries already, in quizzes and games. True or false statements as well are quite useful as well, because they can actually get students to challenge their knowledge themselves and be the teacher. And I'll show you an example of that sort of activity in a moment. Encouraging group discussions as well, and they're really useful to actually generate that debate. So you can actually get students to debate a particular topic as well. So where one student maybe is pro or looking at the advantages and the other student is looking at the disadvantages, and getting them to debate maybe which is most important. You can use peer assessment as well, so you can actually get students to complete a piece of work, and before you actually look at it formally, you can actually ask them to work with a peer and swap over work, and get them then to mark or assess the work and actually come up with ways it could be improved. Then allow then the student then some time in the lesson, which is also known as dirt time as well in some schools, which is directed improvement and reflection time, to actually improve their work. Then you could then have then that amended work submitted to yourself. So hopefully a lot of the initial issues may be addressed by the peers' feedback. By giving feedback to each other as well, you're not only developing the person that originally wrote the work, but also the peer reviewer as well is having some challenge from that sort of activity. Similar to that is self-assessment, so encouraging students to actually review their work to begin with as well before submitting it to you. So encouraging them to check for spelling, grammatical errors, any terminology errors, that sort of thing, to make it improved. And also displaying key terms in the classroom as well are useful as well, because then students are continually exposed to those key terms and those key definitions. So it just adds to that familiarity. And you can also as well point to those terms around your classroom when you're actually delivering your lessons as well, to help then reinforce the terms. So I mentioned be the teacher as well earlier. So that's basically a piece of work that I'd created as a teacher, and I gave that to students and asked them to pretend to be the assessor of that piece of work and actually mark it. So they need to comment on points that are correct and points that are incorrect, and that then encourages students to correct any errors as well. So there could be errors within spelling or grammar even, in addition to errors in the accounting terminology and the approaches used as well. So again, that's quite a fun activity as well to challenge the learners. And you can actually then review that then as a class as to what was positive about that piece of work and what should be developed within that piece of work. So we're going to move on now to developing pupils' writing skills as well, and approaches that you can actually use to encourage your students to produce longer pieces of narrative work. So obviously we've got the common assessment objectives, which are common to all A-level subjects. So you've got AO1, which is knowledge, AO2, which is application, AO3, which is analysis, and AO4, which is evaluation. Obviously, specific questions within the exam paper will target different AOs, different assessment objectives. And the exam papers tend to be written in such a way to achieve an equal balance of the questions covering the various assessment objectives, so that then all papers for various years have identical levels of challenge. So because it wouldn't be fair if a student one year had an easier paper than students sitting the exam in another year. So for knowledge, in A-level and AS accounting, the types of questions that target the knowledge or AO1 marks are numerical calculations, preparing financial statements and accounts. Obviously you need the knowledge to know how to present your financial statements and accounts and what information to put in and how to calculate as well the various sections. Knowledge is also assessed with your key terms and accounting concepts. Do you understand what you're discussing? And also for knowledge marks, there is usually no context required. So it's quite often theoretical, what could be learnt from a textbook. Then go on to AO2 marks, application. The application marks are quite often awarded from numerical calculations. It's about a student selecting the correct data from maybe a financial statement or a case study to compute a calculation to help them to prepare financial statements and accounts. And also for written answers, use of data or context from case studies and real world examples. And it's really important in AS and A-level accounting that learners are familiar with real world examples and can actually apply those examples within their work. So they understand that accounting is not just a theoretical textbook subject. It is something that's very dynamic and relevant to the real world and real life businesses. AO3 is analysis, which involves analysing the figures and numbers actually perhaps calculated or presented in a case study or financial statement. So what do those figures and numbers mean? What is the impact of those figure and numbers on a range of different stakeholders? So very often that's obviously the impact on the business or the owner of the business. But likewise, it could be the impact of the figures on maybe another stakeholder like the supplier. Are they going to be paid regularly? Or maybe on the customers. So a wide range of different stakeholders that obviously students need to be aware of. An analysis considers the effect, change, the impact, considers advantages and disadvantages of that context. So we want a two-sided argument in a lot of cases. To actually produce a full analysis. But obviously in the question, it will tell learners as to whether they're looking for the advantages or disadvantages, because sometimes you'll get questions ask you to analyse two disadvantages maybe of a particular situation, in which case then you would just need to encourage your learners to look at those disadvantages. And the final AO is AO4, which is evaluation. Okay, and this is what quite a few students struggle with, because this is a high-end skills, which involves students evaluating what the figures, numbers, or context actually mean. So they need to come up with a reasoned conclusion or a judgment and a recommendation about perhaps the way forward or what an individual or a business should do. They're going to be doing this by weighing up different sides and arguments and pieces of analysis. And they might even consider the issue from different perspectives as well as part of their evaluation. So, for example, the learner might say that in the current time, the business should take a particular course of action. However, in 3 years' time, maybe when the business is more established, a different course of action may well be more appropriate, or in different economic conditions, a different course of action might be more appropriate. So again, it's about thinking about what the context is and what recommendations are most relevant to a particular condition. So with knowledge, okay, they need to be able to understand and recall calculations and methods. We've already talked about the importance of understanding those key terms. So those key terms are really, really important for those AO1 marks. You need to be able to define the key terms and understand key contexts. Application marks, AO2, they need to be able to find the correct figures for calculations. So within a case study, maybe. They need to apply a term or a keyword to a contextual situation that they've probably been given within the question stem or a short case study. And they also need to be able to present the outcomes in the most appropriate format. So that could be a financial statement. So to improve your learners' application skills, I would recommend that you offer case studies to them on a regular basis with figures that the student then needs to manipulate and select the most relevant data from. So again, there are lots and lots of case studies out there, in particular in the textbook and also in the various resources produced by Cambridge University Press that can actually help to support the application. Students also need to be able to apply key terms and theories to different business contexts, concepts and situations. They need to be able to address problems and issues with the most relevant areas of knowledge. So again, you could even look at maybe issues going on in the news currently, maybe in the media. There might be a story with an accounting theme that you can actually then get students to debate and consider the problems and issues and how the organisation or managers could manage that situation. So for application marks, we need to focus on case study and real world application. And also in the exam, remember that gaining application marks is much, much more than copying text from a case study. Examiners will rarely give application marks for learners just selecting and copying statements or words from the case study. They need to actually apply it. So just name dropping product names or the business name from the case study will not get you any application marks. However, thinking about maybe some of the materials that are used to make that product may well get you application marks. So for example, if the business example in the case study is a takeaway business and they make maybe chips, which are fried potatoes, within their product range, it would be perhaps talking about the potatoes and maybe working with the potato growers and the potato suppliers. That would then get you then those application marks. AO3 then is analysis, which involves analysing the implication of a figure or a financial statement. So again, it's looking at the impact on the business or the particular stakeholder that the learner is asked to consider. You need to obviously consider benefits and drawbacks. So again, debating alternatives on future courses of action are really, really useful for gaining those analysis marks. Okay, and we're going to look at some acronyms later on in this webinar as well that will help with analysis. AO4 is evaluation. So evaluating accounting information to make a decision or a judgment and recommending or advising on a way forward. Learners need to make fully informed decisions which consider all factors. And also the learners as well should also use their own beliefs and experiences alongside their knowledge of accounting to actually come up with an informed evaluation. What do they think based on the theory and the key terms and understanding that they have of AS and A-level accounting would actually support them in recommending the best way forward. So obviously, when exam papers are written, the authors use a bank of common command words. In AS and A-level accounting, many of those commonly used command words include to prepare, obviously prepare a financial statement, to calculate, obviously from some financial data, to state or explain. So that's again those key terms. You could state those key terms, explain what those key terms mean. Then we've got analyse as well for those AO3 marks, so analysing a particular situation or a context. And then advising, so recommending, evaluating a way forward. In my experience as well, it's really important for your learners to understand those command words so that they know exactly how to prepare and draft their answers to their questions. So spending time quite early on in the course when they start looking at exam papers, as to what those command words actually mean and what they actually require, and how the examiners as well build up those marks by looking at past papers can be really, really helpful. So again, with those command words, obviously display them around the classroom walls, with definitions as well, so that learners are continually exposed to those command words. Obviously, question your pupils as well and encourage them to explain what they have to do when they're given a new task or essay. So maybe if you give your learners in a past exam question to complete as a task in the classroom, get them to begin with to plan their answer and explain exactly what they have to do. And if they can verbalize that back to you as well, that's a really good way of actually checking that they understand what is required. Because very often I find that learners actually answer a different question initially if they're not quite clear on the command word and what the question is actually requiring. And underlining and highlighting command words as well can really, really help with this. Obviously, with writing skills as well can be quite challenging for a lot of students, because that's why they choose accounting, because they don't like writing essays. So it's really important to encourage your pupils to understand the importance of their writing skills. And obviously practice makes perfect. So the more feedback, the more exposure that they can get to writing tasks, the more helpful it can be, because they're gaining that more and more experience. So offering weekly writing tasks can help to develop your pupils' confidence and their skills. So various ways of supporting writing. Obviously, the use of writing frames as well can be helpful as well, so that then your learners then have a set template to actually write work to, and they're actually supported. Obviously, scaffolding as well their answers as well in that way. Using word maps, and I've got an example of a word map that you could perhaps offer to students initially in the course. Giving them as well dedicated planning time. So for example, if you're going to give your learners, I don't know, 20 minutes to complete a particular question, actually tell them that the first 3 minutes or 5 minutes even is going to be dedicated to them actually planning their answer, having some paper, developing a mind map or a list before actually going into writing. And use of well-known acronyms as well can actually help with that planning time to make it more structured. Obviously, offer regular feedback as well. So we talked earlier about the importance of peer feedback as well, because that can be really, really invaluable, and that develops both the peer and the reviewer, and also from the teacher, obviously. And to provide time during the lesson as well for pupils to correct and redo their work. So to encourage the expansion of points and maybe correcting any misconceptions that they've actually developed through that time, that dedicated improvement in reflection time. So this is an example of a word map. So to advise the directors of XYZ Limited which machine they should buy. So again, this is after perhaps an investment appraisal question, whereby the learner might have had to have calculated maybe the payback period, the NPV for two machines, okay, and then they need to select then which machine they should actually buy. So we've actually got here the PEAL acronym, which I'm going to go through with you in a bit more detail in a moment. So where the student has to make the point or the statement. So for example, they can actually then state which machine they feel that the company should buy. They're going to then use evidence then to support their point or statement. So that evidence is probably going to come here from the investment appraisal calculations that they've calculated. So the results from their numerical calculations is going to support one machine as being the best investment. They're going to then explain their financial or numerical calculations. What do the NPV results mean? Why are they significant? What is the benefits and drawbacks of actually choosing that particular machine and the implications for that business? And then they're going to then link it to that context. So why is that machine the best purchase for X, Y, and Z Limited? And what is it about that business's context that they've been given in a case study that makes that the best purchase? And then end with a clear conclusion, which is linked to the question that is posed. And here you can see at the bottom of the map, I've given them some keywords that I want them to actually include. So again, that's more or less like a checklist that the learner can actually use to ensure that they're getting all of those key terms into their actual answer. They're using the correct terminology, and they're applying the results from maybe the numerical calculations that they would have done perhaps earlier on in that particular question. Obviously, that answer is worth 5 marks as well, which is significant, and that can actually mean a difference between obviously a grade boundary. So structuring essays, obviously most of your learners will be familiar with a basic essay structure with the introduction, having the main body in paragraphs and conclusions. And it's really important in AS and A-level accounting to encourage your learners to write in clear paragraphs. Peel, this is the approach that I showed on the word map earlier on. When you make the point, you back it up with evidence, you explain what this actually means, and then you link it back to the context. So again, so it's a really, really good way of actually bringing out those AO3 and AO4 marks as well when you're actually making that recommendation. You're backing up that recommendation by strong evidence. You're explaining what that evidence is showing and why that supports the point that you've made. And then you're linking it back to the context. So again, you're getting those application marks and you're making sure that your evaluation is contextually rich. T as well is another acronym that can be used in AS and A-level accounting, which is where the learner would actually start by identifying the key accounting topic that's actually being assessed. They would then present evidence again to support the point or statement, and then analyse the benefits and drawbacks or the implications for the business or the owner or whatever stakeholder that they're actually looking at. So I've got an example here of a AS or A-level accounting question. We've got Cyril, who's considering investing in either JPLC or KPLC. He's looking for a low-risk investment that pays him a regular income with the potential of high growth in both share price and annual dividend. Advise Cyril in which of the two companies he should invest. So obviously this question is going to come at the end of a number of numerical calculations that the learners would have already calculated. And it's encouraging them then to evaluate and make a recommendation using and interpreting the results from those numerical calculations. So with the PIL acronym, the learner should obviously make the point. First of all, they must start off by saying which of the companies that they feel that Cyril should invest in. They would then use evidence and from those numerical calculations to actually reinforce the point that they're making. They're going to then explain and evaluate why they feel they should actually be investing in the company that they feel is most appropriate, and then linking it back to the context. So they'll be linking it back to why it would help them to receive a regular income, and also the context for the potential for high growth in both share price and annual dividend, why that company would then meet Cyril's objectives within the context. And that would then be a really good answer. Got another example of a question, which you could obviously use the PIL or the T model for, but obviously we're running quite short of time now. But hopefully the example that I gave earlier has actually demonstrated how the PIL model or the T model could be used. Another useful way of actually getting AS and A-level accounting students to expand on their points and explain in detail is a BLT acronym, which is because, leading to, and therefore. This is a really common framework used in A-level, but it is useful. Okay, so for example, a student might be asked to analyse the benefits of using a computerised accounting system. So the student could write: a benefit of using a computerised accounting system for the business is increased accuracy. And a lot of international learners would actually stop their answer there. However, they need to get those higher marks, they need to justify and they need to expand on their answer. So they can expand on it by saying, this is because most accounting systems carry out automatic calculations, leading to a reduction in human error, therefore increasing the accuracy of the financial statements. So they've actually demonstrated how the computerised accounting system helps to increase accuracy. They're not just making the point, they're actually then reinforcing it and backing it up. So BLT can be actually used in conjunction with PIL. And by having these easy to remember acronyms, a student can actually go into the exam and actually have that in their head. So when they're actually framing their answer in their planning section, they can write PEEL or BLT actually in the margin or the top of their exam paper to remind them of using those techniques. So obviously supporting writing as well as by demystifying exam marking as well. So ask your pupils as well to answer past exam questions and then share the exam mark scheme as well with them to help them to understand how questions are marked and at what skills are required to achieve top marks as well. And after reviewing the mark schemes with those learners, you could actually then give those students the time, the dedicated improvement and reflection time to actually update their work to achieve a higher mark and actually improve it further. So then they're using their learning and their understanding of the mark scheme and how that works to further improve their work. So finally, we're going to quickly look at activities for learning. Unfortunately, we're quite short of time, but obviously I've gone through a lot of these activities as well during my discussions. So activities then used in the accounting classroom. We all know that most activities tend to involve calculations and preparation of financial accounts. Okay, it's accounting, that's what we expect. Okay, and obviously a lot of marks in the exam paper are for those types of skills. However, writing skills are also important in the accounting classroom, and this is again where students struggle. So it's really important to think about activities that you can actually use to support understanding of key terms and developing those essay responses as well, and developing those learners' writing skills. So various activities that you can actually use to support those types of skills. So having debates in the classroom as well, really effective. I've actually got students as well to actually use investment appraisal results again, where they've actually got the results for MPV and ARR and payback for two different investment options. One learner has got to put an argument forward for one course of action, one investment, and the other learner has to debate why another investment is the best, and actually getting them to actually debate and come up with the pros and cons of each. And that can be actually quite powerful as well. Learners enjoy doing that, but it actually gets them to develop their thinking skills and their analytical skills as well. Doing role plays as well can be really useful as well. So you could actually get learners to look at different stakeholders as well, actually role play out one from the business owner's perspective, maybe one from perhaps a shareholder's perspective, and actually role play and analyze a financial statement in that way. What does that financial statement mean for each of them? Actually role play what the viewpoint would be for both. You can encourage obviously guest speakers from maybe local businesses to come in and actually talk to your learners as well, and that can be really powerful to actually bring home the dynamic and the real life the importance of accounting. Obviously quizzes as well. Use of articles from the media and company annual reports as well can be really useful. My students love looking through company annual reports, especially for companies that they're interested in as well, and actually seeing how a lot of the terms and a lot of the learning from their course are actually used in real life. Obviously case studies as well are really, really important. Peer support as well can be powerful, and also getting them to actually deliver presentations. So get a learner as well to deliver to the rest of the class, get them to teach the rest of the class about a key term maybe. Obviously that will then develop as well their communication skills and their presentation skills alongside their accounting knowledge, and quite often that can be quite a powerful way of actually introducing a topic area in a different way, a more innovative way than just always coming from the teacher. So I'm going to conclude with some key points for student success. Obviously, don't forget to spend time on the non-numerical aspects of the syllabus. Obviously, essay writing and learning are key terms and are critical for success in the qualification. Offer regular activities to support essay writing. So essay writing is not just felt to be like a bolt-on to the numerical side of accounting. It's actually a really key skill that they actually need to develop. Use supporting acronyms and writing frames and maths to give your students a structure and to support them with it, with actual writing. Regularly use past papers and mark schemes so that your learners are familiar with the format of the papers and the secrets to achieving a high mark. And obviously they're widely available on the awarding body's website. Okay, so all that's left for me to say now is to thank you for joining today's webinar. I hope it has been useful. And I'm now happy to answer any questions alongside my colleagues from Cambridge University Press.
Thank you, Julie. That was a really great session. Lots of great tips that I'm sure our teachers will really appreciate and be able to take into their classrooms. We have had a few questions through. A lot of them have been about the syllabus, and I've directed people to Cambridge International's website for more information on that. So please do contact our colleagues for syllabus-specific questions at Cambridge Assessment International Education. However, we do have one here that we might be able to help with, Julie, and please do pop some more in the Q&A box if people think of them as we go through.
Okay.
But we have a question from Anush, and they ask, other than Kahoot and Nearpod, could you please recommend some more apps that will make the teaching more effective? Thank you in advance.
Yeah, there are various apps that are available, but as you're probably aware, a lot of them as well don't actually offer specific A-level accounting like functionality. However, I've actually created my own apps as well, like using PowerPoint as well. So they are actually quite useful. They're quite easy to create as well. So you can actually then develop your own. Also, as you're probably aware of, within Kahoot, you can actually develop your own questions as well, though you've got your bank of pre-created content. You can actually create your own. What I will do is I will have a look as well and see if I can actually find any other examples as well to perhaps share as well with colleagues as well from other apps that are available. But as you are aware, a lot of them are tailored to maybe some of the more core subjects rather than the specialist subjects like accounting.
Thank you, Julie. We have a question from Geetha, and they ask, can you please suggest some activities to teach accounting standards in a more interesting way?
And that is a challenge, because obviously it is it's an important subject which a lot of students, as you know, don't find the most inspiring. I think a key way is by using those apps like Kahoot as well to actually bring in that competitive element as well, to actually create it. Also getting them to do some research as well is I find quite useful as well, to actually to explain the background, obviously, around the standards so that they understand what a standard is and why we need them. And then give different examples of accounting standards and get each student to actually then go away and actually carry out their own research. They can actually get them quite interested in it because they can actually see how it applies to the real world, and then encourage the students to share their learning then with each other, maybe through a presentation as well, so that they all then use using like quite a snowball effect of learning, actually then support each other and actually share their learning amongst the group. Quite often you will find as well, your learners as well will come up with innovative ways of actually presenting the information and actually getting them to innovate in that particular way, because each learner will present in their own style as well, which again can be quite interesting.
Thank you, Julie. We have a question from Ambili, and I do apologise if I'm pronouncing any of these names incorrectly, but I'm doing my very best. But they ask how to make accounting classes interesting when they're doing them online. Obviously, that's something you've got a lot of experience with yourself, Julie.
Yeah, and that is obviously challenging as well. If you are using maybe the Teams framework as well, it's about using breakout rooms as well. I find them quite useful as well to actually encourage our learners to still work together and have that student interaction with each other when actually working on small scale activities as well. So they're really, really useful. And again, then you've got then that student interaction, which you lose with the online forums. Also, it's about maybe using IT as well more innovatively as well, perhaps creating your own accounting blog as well for your class as well. So actually you can actually then put up like key things for them to actually go away and learn in preparation for your online class, so that then your learners can actually come in and actually have a debate, maybe encourage your students to share what they've actually found and what they actually know. So you're not actually then delivering in a lecture style, which is quite often the risk with online lessons as well. I find a lot of them have become lectures rather than interactive. So actually using the technology and harnessing the use of breakout rooms and blogs and those types of systems to actually then sort of use then some of the techniques that you would normally have used in the classroom face to face with learners.
Thank you, Julie. I'm sure a lot of people attending today will find that information useful. We have a question from Nutan, who says the AS portion of the course is vast and challenging for new students who haven't learnt it at IGCSE. How do I tackle this problem with time limitations?
That it is very challenging, as you say, especially for international learners as well, because the terminology is so specific as well. I think it is about delivering in very, very small chunks as well. So actually a little and often is definitely the best approach to actually encourage students to actually master what specific key terms mean. I actually use the structure of the textbook as well as a really good planning tool as well, because the textbook is structured in such a way that it actually then introduces learners to the correct topics in the correct order that you actually need to go through. So again, so use that very much as your framework as well, and encourage your learners as well to read chapters of the textbook in advance of each lesson as well, so they don't actually come into your lesson code. They actually have some pre-learning and pre-knowledge of what you're actually going to be discussing is really important. And also engaging with them in a fun way as well will actually help them to acquire that knowledge as well. So using those apps, using those quizzes, using those games, having interactive styles is really, really important, because then that will help then their knowledge retention. And if they're retaining the knowledge, that then will then increase the amount of progress that they make over time.
Thank you, Julie. We have another question from Anna Ruth, who asks, some of my students are interested in knowing the career opportunities. Should they pursue a higher education in accounting? And they want to join any internships after school. Are there any internship opportunities like that after finishing ASNA level accounting? And I appreciate, Julie, that you may be only able to comment from a UK perspective on this one.
Yeah.
But have you dealt with this yourself in the classroom?
Yes, I have. Yeah, obviously, after completing their A-level course, a lot of students are interested in actually then going on and actually gaining more experience within the field. There are a lot of intern opportunities available in the UK, or there were pandemic. So a lot of companies are really keen to actually take on, students with A-level accounting knowledge to actually do some unpaid internships. You can actually get those as well during the summer vacation period as well. It's quite a useful time as well to actually do that, when companies are actually maybe experiencing staff holidays as well, so they actually like that extra pair of hands as well available. I think it's really important for students to make contact with those companies early on as well, so that then the companies know that they are really interested and actually showcasing what they can actually offer as well.
Thank you, Julie. I think we've got time maybe for one more question. So we have a question from Nimisha, and they ask, is collaborative learning okay for teaching accounting and business? Now, I imagine there is a bit of a crossover here, but I just wondered what your experience of that was, Julie.
Absolutely, yeah, because I in addition to accounting, I also teach AS and A-level business studies, and there is quite a bit of overlap. So for example, topics such as investment appraisal and some of the ratios as well that we actually cover are actually covered on both syllabuses. So I think it's really important for you to sit down as an accounting teacher with your business colleagues and actually review and compare the content of the two syllabuses. What are the overlapping topic areas? Highlight those topic areas, and then actually then work out a plan then for delivering those shared content areas together, because then you can spend more time then on some of the other aspects of the syllabus as well. Also with your business colleagues as well, it's really important because you can actually bring in different perspectives as well, so you can actually get different case study examples, different slants and skills as well brought in to actually complement your learners' accounting skills. But also, please don't forget that some learners maybe on the course will only study accounting. So again, you mustn't alienate those. You don't want a two-tier class system. So it's really important to deliver something that will cater to all of your students' needs.
Thank you, Julie. A great Q&A session there that I'm sure our teachers will find very useful. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. And thank you for all of your questions, and apologies if we didn't get around to answering yours. As I said, if you do have any questions on the exams or on the syllabus, then please do direct them to Cambridge International. Just a quick thank you to Julie as well for taking the time to present for us today. It was a great session. As we said earlier, we will be uploading a recording of this webinar to YouTube, so you'll be able to revisit that and share with your colleagues. If you take that you'd like to hear more from Cambridge University Press, we'll be in touch over email with even more great content from Julie, and we'll let you know where you can find out more about our new Cambridge International AS and A-level accounting series. So finally, we just ask that you please fill in the post-webinar survey that we'll be launching momentarily. There are just 3 quick questions that should only take a minute of your time. So that just leaves me to say, have a good day wherever you are, and thank you again on behalf of Cambridge University Press. Goodbye for now.